Georgia Film Festival. This is the roundtable discussion for the Filmmakers to Watch Shorts block. If we can go around, please introduce yourself if you want to say your name, the title of your film, a little bit about your film, and what school you made the film under. Please do.
All right, well, my name is Cody Stubbs. My film is called My Love, and it deals with a young girl going through the foster care system, which is super close to my heart because on both sides of my family, my mom and dad and my in-laws have all adopted out of foster care. And so I have four little people in my life who are not biologically related to me, but they are absolutely as much part of my family as anybody that is my blood. And so I kind of made it as an ode to them for my senior capstone at the University of North Georgia.
Hi guys, my name is Manhar. I'm the writer, director, and producer for the film Stardust. I made the thesis film under Savannah College of Art and Design. And the film is about these two strangers who meet on an airplane, and at 30,000 feet in midair, they start discovering about each other and a death that one of the protagonists is going towards, flying from Atlanta in the US to Kabul in Afghanistan. And the conversation that they're having about, the moment of death. It's not a grieving process as such that we go through, but really the punch in the gut where we get to know about someone close to us just passing away. So it's kind of delving into that area, and we've kept it simple, but at the same time, we got an airplane to shoot in that we designed on a set. So a lot of my crowdfunding money went into that, and it was a beautifully cathartic, and at the same time, the learning process was amazing because I collaborated with SCAD students as well as some alumni and mentors outside of Atlanta. And yeah, I'm excited for everyone to have a look at the film as well. And I'm excited to see all of your films as well.
Hi, my name is Kay Barnes. I am the writer, director, and producer of the film Mirage. Mirage is about a man and a woman in a military family who live this illusion of kind of perfection in their marriage, and until one day something happens that challenges that narrative, and they're forced to kind of face their reality. And yeah, I am a military veteran, and I'm married to a soldier, and so it was important to me to show this film and include the military community. And I made it during my first year as a graduate student at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts.
Right on. So I teach, right? I'm a professor at University of North Georgia, and I see my students struggle to make their films and overcome so many obstacles in the course of making their films. No matter how big, no matter how small, every film presents its own series of challenges. So I want to hear the stories behind the making of your films. And Manhar, let's start with you because it sounds like you had a humongous production.
Okay. So before I get into that, I want to actually let you guys know that the story behind the film is actually a story that happened with me on a flight back from Atlanta to my hometown in India. And I was sitting next to this lady who, at first she had the window seat, and she was kind of nudging and testing me if later on she can, have a conversation with me. And I didn't quite realize the intensity of it. And, as the flight progressed, we got our food. She didn't eat anything. She didn't drink anything. And I was watching something, I remember. And then later on, I was sleeping, and she poked and she woke me up. And then she asked me why I was going home and what was happening. And then she finally confessed that she was heading home because her father just died. And that just hit me really hard because 6 months ago, before that flight that I was taking, my grandfather had just died. And I was in the US and I was going through my second semester at SCAD. And so it was a very, it was, the metaphor of the floor underneath your legs just being whisked away. I felt that. And as soon as she told me about her father and what, I completely understood what she was going through. So I woke up, and throughout the rest of the flight, we had to change our flights at Istanbul. But throughout the rest of the flight from Atlanta to Istanbul, we just spoke. And the lucky thing was that before I was traveling back home, at that point, I had already gone back home. And there's a certain form of, you know, something on the lines of closure that you can never achieve because you weren't there when he passed away. And when I went home at the time, when I did, my grandfather was the mentor for not just me but everyone in the family. And I saw the empty sofa where he would sit on, and I suddenly was opening his cupboards and seeing his jackets and stuff like that. So it just made me realize how these things are just very universal in that sense. And when that event happened, at that point we had the conversation, but I read a lot of books because I was really curious about what happens after we die. And that was the genesis of the making of the film. And then when this interaction happened with her, I knew that I had to place a story here. And I knew that when I was writing it, it had to be in a plane so that, we can have the intensity of it, where we can showcase the internal kind of turmoil and grief through pure performance, but in the middle of earth and heaven at 30,000 feet in midair. So production wise, we made a lot of calls to find a set, and we finally locked on RJR Props in Atlanta. And, we had a lot of meetings with the people there. They were really kind people. And we shot over 2 days on the 9th and 10th of February, which was a Sunday and a Monday. And the whole process of getting them on board and getting the actors there and having a couple of tech scouts there and all of those kind of things, it was a learning process because I knew that I'm writing it and directing it, but here I was also producing it, which according to a lot of my mentors at SCAD was told me that, you should either direct or you should produce, especially starting out. And that was something that I knew that, and I wanted to, I love acting as well. So I kind of took myself out of the actor position, and I cast people. And I knew that if my right brain is working towards the creative direction, my left brain will organize things and produce it to the best of my capabilities. So it was, when I look back, we were really, really lucky that we shot just a month before the lockdown happened and COVID spread or everything became virtual in spring. But yeah, short story long, but that was the process.
That's great that you were able to get production in under the wire that no one knew about really yet. So, I mean, it sounds like everyone's projects are incredibly personal, which I think always makes such meaningful films, but having that level of responsibility sometimes makes those obstacles feel like they're completely insurmountable. So Kate, tell us about your film. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Kate.
Sorry about that. Some of the difficulties I had with it, or challenges per se. Well, I think the biggest challenge for me was I did write, direct, and produce it, but I also acted in it as the lead. And so I think one of the funniest and most challenging moments during that was, my actors, remember, we would be in a scene and I'm totally committed. I started off as an actor before I ever went into the production and development side of things. And I would be in a scene with a actor and we'd be in the moment, and then I would step out of my actor's hat and go, now how about we try that this way? So it's almost like you're double brained or you're two different people in that moment. And I did have to wear two hats, and I think that was the most difficult thing. And then I think we had on the last day of shooting, everyone was sick. which is terrible. We're hoping and not hoping at the same time that maybe we all had COVID and got over it, but this was right before COVID is a thing. It was like in the late fall, and so who knows what it was, but we were all sick and trying to suck it up and like make it through the film day. And then a couple months later, people are like, hey, there's this thing called COVID. So that was challenging, but we all made it through it, and we're very grateful that we were able to complete the film.
That is so great that you didn't have to like worry about, in the same way that people do now, spreading a disease on set. And actually, Cody, you filmed yours way before any of this went down.
Way before.
It's been a long journey for you. Tell us about it.
So our actual production, we had 3 days, and they were like as smooth as it could possibly have gone. I was like, man, this is like, it's kind of easy making films. Like, it's fun. Everything is going good. We had a couple of crew things that, you know, we had to switch up the last minute, but like, it was still nothing, you know, nothing too crazy. Sorry, my dog. Sam. It's really distracting.
The reason I'm on mute is because my dogs are barking.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I don't feel as bad. And so the filming went great. Everything was fine. I actually got to film in the foster care agency that the kids my in-laws adopted came out of. So it was kind of like a full circle moment, which was really neat. They let us use space there. And so we filmed, you know, in the moment, in the place where we met these kids. And then I actually used a house, their house. And so like everything was very organic. Everything was, you know, it was just really cool, really neat, and just kind of a full circle moment for me personally. And so we got to post-production, and there was, I'm going to call it a miscommunication, if you will. And my editor just did not deliver. And so we had to fight through that, because it was, you know, around the time of my capstone. So I went into my capstone with not even a film to show, very frustrated, very, you know, not okay with the whole situation. And so I spent literally the night before my capstone presentation, I did not sleep. And I'm a little bit older. I'm 29, so I was 27 when I made this. So I was too old to be pulling an all-nighter. And so I stayed up way too late and just trying to put something together to show my panel, you know, super frustrated, very embarrassed. And then the next editor that I had took 6 months to tell me that they really couldn't do anything with it. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, like how in the world is this a reality right now? And in the meantime, my wife and I had our first kid, changed careers, and honestly, it just kind of fell on the back burner. I was like, I'll just get to it when I get to it. And I was actually the client that I was telling you about that I've been working with. It was my first time working with them, and I got a little frustrated, and I was like, man, I just want to make narrative stuff. And I just kind of came to a point where I was like, well, I can't make anything new if I don't finish this. And so I actually reached out to James, and I said, hey man, I need an editor bad. And so he threw someone my way, and she was actually a script supervisor on the film, which was like really neat, because I didn't make the connection until we had met. And as frustrating as that time was, I'm so thankful for it, because I don't think that the film would have had the meaning that it has if Ellen would not have been the one editing it. And so for me, it was just kind of a learning process of every story has its time. And I'm just kind of resting in the fact that it just wasn't the right time for it to be done whenever I wanted it to be done. And so again, I just think that like Ellen, she brought just something completely new to the story and the way that she edited it together. And it was just really, really, really neat.
The journey that students go on through the filmmaking process is so important, because it's a growing experience. You learn a lot from it. So I want to ask you all what your number one takeaway is, like the main lesson that you learned through these films. So Cody, it sounds like yours is to let it rest, to give it some time. You met a deadline still. So you're not saying you don't meet deadlines.
Yes, absolutely, definitely.
But sometimes you shouldn't maybe push a square peg through a round hole kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, personally for me, like I'm used to ridiculous schedules with the way that I went through school with work. And I think that it's not necessarily, it's not normal to like rush and just, hustle and bustle and get to I mean, it is normal, but it shouldn't be. Because I think that the best things come out of times of rest. And so that's definitely my big takeaway from this whole experience.
So you feel pretty comfortable through
Yeah,
COVID.
I
Sorry, Manhar, go ahead.
yeah, I completely second that because, I feel that, the best things would come organically, and some things take time, but then, the fruit is much more sweeter than once it's out. And I think also one of the realizations for me, I would say, was about how um, a story kind of has a life of its own, and by the end of it, we're just mediums trying to make it come alive. And if we just become still and listen to what the story uh, demands or needs, and just kind of cater to that, I think it'll be the purest kind of collaboration an artist can have with his work or her work. Um, and I'm trying to inculcate that in everything that I'm doing, not just work wise, but with relationships and family and friendships and stuff like that as well. Because I feel like there's kind of something extremely spiritual, for lack of a better word, that kind of uh, demands our attention, yet at the same time takes a lot from us and gives us a lot of things that only in retrospect can we value and understand the amount of change and growth that we've gone through. So even though it was, as of now, as a 25-year-old filmmaker, a short film which was a thesis film that I had to cater to a deadline for SCAD for my master's. But eventually, when stories and projects and features and shows and it just gets longer and more expanded, I feel like God lies in details at the end of the day. Then, even then, especially then, and I can't even imagine the amount of growth that artists have gone through, that we look up to, and the stories that they have not just put on screen, but then the behind the screen stories that we're all talking about today. So yeah, it's a very right brain, left brain, spiritual. There's so many things that happen. And one last thing that I would say was about kind of having the patience and meditating through it all, because things will change exterior, but it's all up to our reactions and our directions that can kind of make it or break it with the team that we're working with. So a lot of lessons.
Yeah. What about you, Kay?
I think the thing that that I most importantly learned about this process was really about the story. I really struggled with telling the story just because it's such a taboo topic when you come to marriage and people's personal lives, and everyone likes to show the positive side of it, and no one really likes to examine the other stuff. And I just, for one, know, like, as a married woman, that marriage can be challenging, and there's this innate like feeling and pressure to show the good side to everyone, right? My life is better than yours, we're perfect, our life is more perfect than yours. And so yeah, I really wanted to show the challenges of that, the other side of the coin, and more specifically show some of the challenges that some military families face. And it was just personal to me, and I really have been told, that no one's going to want to hear that story because it's the other side of the coin. They want to hear like the happy patriotic side. I'm like, well, I don't want to tell that story. So my takeaway was to just tell my story no matter what. Like it's gonna resonate with someone.
And it has. I'm very excited for people to see your story. I'm married, Cody. I know you're married. Um, Anyone who is in a marriage, I think, knows that it takes work, and the work is worth it, right? Uh, so I have a question for you all, and this can kind of wrap things up. We have a bunch of like 20, 21-year-old UNG students who are, for some, making their films for the first time. For others, they might be doing a capstone production, which is kind of our thesis production. And they're struggling through the obstacle of COVID in order to make their films. What is your recommendation to them? What are your motivation words, let's say, to getting through it?
What I would say, and this is from my own personal experience, start with what you have and start now. Just do it, right? Don't try and write the VFX spell. And if you have that, start with that. But write the thing that you have now, that you have access to now. Tell that story, because somewhere in your own day-to-day life, there is a story there, and it's going to connect with someone else out there. So start with what you have and start now. The only thing between you and your film being made is you. Make your film.
Wow, that's so true. I will still take that advice.
I was about to say, does anyone else even need to go after that? Yeah, I mean, I would definitely echo that for sure, and just enjoy the process. Like, just enjoy the process of failing, because you're going to mess up. Like, things are not going to go the way that they are supposed to, and look at it as an opportunity to learn instead of resonating in any sort of failure or mistake. And again, yeah, like you said, I think that to your story, Kay, like, you're right. Like, not a lot of people want to look at the hard things that come with dealing with marriage and relationships and things like that, but those resonate because they're real, like, and so I think that that my advice would just to be, man, there's my wife and my kid. My advice would just be to enjoy the process, even though, like, I can't even imagine trying to make a film during COVID. But I would just say, do your best to enjoy it, and enjoy every moment, including the ones that don't go nowhere near according to plan. That's what I would say.
I second both of what Kay and Cody have said, and just to add to that, I would just say, filmmaking is a fun process, but it requires a lot of people. So just find your team and find your herd, in that sense, who you can kind of trust on a rainy day, and who will have your back despite whatever circumstances are happening. Even if you're on the 13th hour of shoot, they'll pick you up and they'll be like, we got this, don't worry. I feel like if you have that community with you, no matter what the obstacle is, the story and the film will win. And that'll all just come through.
Better words have not been said. Thank you all so much.